Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. You ever had your soul pulled out through your throat? That's how Daniel Cross starts his story. The screen's red. Blinking alarm lights. Sirens distant but rising. His face bloodied, one sleeve torn, zip ties biting into his wrists. Military boots thunder outside the holding cell door. He stares dead into the camera. Cold. Empty. She left me for a medal. So I destroyed the man who wore it. Cut to black. Earlier that year. Sunlight spills over the Cross family breakfast table. Your eggs are cold, Daniel says, trying to smile. I'm late, Elise replies, barely touching her plate. She's dressed sharp. Hairpin back. Lips pale. Not a trace of the woman he once knew. Daniel, 41, is a military engineer. Brilliant with machines, awkward with people. The kind of man who'll fix your car without being asked, and still blush when you thank him. He spent 12 years building tech that kept soldiers alive. He never cared about medals. Elise did. He watches her pull her badge over her neck, NATO stamped across it in bold blue. She's glowing. For the first time in months. What's the meeting, he asks. Classified, she says with a smirk. Then she leans down and kisses his forehead, not his lips, and she's gone. He stares at the door, still chewing. The eggs are cold. Outside, a military transport Humvee rolls past. The new commanding officer's arrival. Colonel Marcus Trent. Silver star on his chest, swagger in his walk. Elise is waiting at the gate. She laughs at something he says. Her hand lingers on his arm a little too long. Daniel watches from the kitchen window. He doesn't know it yet, but his marriage just died in that laugh. Before we move ahead, I just want to say your support truly means everything. We're building something special here, and our next big goal is reaching 10,000 incredible subscribers. If you're feeling the emotions in these stories, imagine what's still to come. Subscribe now, be part of this amazing journey, and let's keep growing together. Your one click can make a real difference. Let's continue the story. The next morning starts the same. Coffee. Eggs. The chair across from him. Empty. Daniel stares at Elise's untouched fork. She hadn't come home until after midnight. Said she was in a briefing. No apologies. No eye contact. No lies that even tried to sound convincing. He knows. But he doesn't want to know. Her phone buzzes on the counter. A new message. From M. Tonight again? A winking emoji. Like it's some teenage summer fling. Daniel picks up the phone. His fingers hover over the screen. He knows her passcode. Her birthday. He doesn't open it. Not yet. Instead, he puts the phone down, grabs a pen, and circles the date on the wall calendar. Just to remember. The day everything started to rot. At work, no one suspects anything. Daniel buries himself in satellite interface schematics. Eyes red, hands steady. Every click of his mouse feels like denial. Like staying busy will keep the demons out. Colonel Trent walks in mid-briefing. Tall, tan, clean-cut. One of those men who fills a room by doing nothing at all. Your design saved 3 men in Kabul, Trent says after the meeting. Impressive work. Daniel just nods. He doesn't trust flattery. Especially from a man who smells like Elise's perfume. That night, he waits for her to fall asleep. The house is dark. Quiet. He walks to the kitchen. 2 wine glasses in the sink. Lipstick stains on both. Daniel doesn't drink wine. He picks one up, studies the rim. Slowly sets it back down. Then he walks to the laptop. Opens it. Chrome is still logged in. An email draft from Elise sits open. He's too obsessed with work to notice. Just like you said. Daniel doesn't blink. Doesn't cry. He just whispers, "You bastard." But he doesn't know if he means Marcus or himself. Colonel Marcus Trent makes his presence known like a flare gun at midnight. Within 2 weeks of his assignment to Fort Halberd, he's already reorganized the command structure, replaced 3 division heads, and started hosting informal leadership mixers at his private on-base quarters. With catered wine. Elise always volunteers to help. You should come sometime, she tells Daniel, lipstick perfect, not even trying to hide the new blouse he didn't buy her. "I'll pass," he mutters. He doesn't say what he really wants to say, that she's slipping through his fingers like sand. That her laugh's changed. That when she touches him, it's only out of habit, like muscle memory from a dream she's already waking up from. Daniel works late one night, tweaking a targeting AI. The lab hums with cold fluorescence. Then, through the glass, he sees them. Elise and Marcus. Outside the barracks. She's laughing. He leans in close. She doesn't pull away. Daniel watches, frozen. Like he's not real anymore. Like he's watching someone else's life collapse. When he finally gets home, Elise is asleep. One shoe on, makeup still smeared. Her phone buzzes again. Same name. M. This time, he opens it. A photo. Her hand in his. Legs tangled in white sheets. Daniel puts the phone down. Sits beside the bed. His eyes empty. His voice a whisper. "You gave up love? For rank?" He walks to the bathroom. Vomits. Then he stares at himself in the mirror. Not blinking. Not breathing. They're not going to get away with this. He doesn't know what that means yet. But soon he will. Daniel sat through the entire bass mixer without touching his drink. A sea of uniforms and forced laughter swirled around him. Elise sparkled across the room, her hand resting lightly on Marcus Trent's forearm as she told a story that made the entire circle laugh. Not once did she look at Daniel. He leaned against the wall, eyes scanning her like a man watching his own ghost flirt with someone else. She wasn't nervous, wasn't hiding it. That's what hurt the most, not the affair, but the ease of it. Like cheating on him had become natural. "Chief Engineer Cross," Marcus said, appearing at his side without warning, a smirk on his face. "Didn't see you mingling." Daniel forced a polite nod. "Not much for parties." Marcus laughed. Elise said the same thing. But she's clearly proven herself wrong. That name, Elise, in Marcus's mouth, made Daniel's stomach turn. "You too close?" Daniel asked, sipping his untouched scotch just to keep his hands from shaking. Marcus shrugged, flashing that politician's smile. "She's brilliant. Command's lucky to have her." "Yeah. So was I." Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised at the edge in Daniel's voice. He opened his mouth to respond, but Elise arrived, slipping between them like it was rehearsed. "There you are," she said to Marcus, her hand brushing his sleeve before turning to Daniel, adding flatly, "I didn't know you were still here." Still here? That phrase echoed in Daniel's skull as they walked away laughing, leaving him behind with a full glass and an empty gut. He left early, didn't say goodbye. On his way out, he passed Elise's car in the dark corner of the parking lot, windows fogged. Daniel didn't look inside. He didn't need to. At 2:47 a.m., Daniel stared at the blinking cursor on a blank message draft. His hands hovered over the keyboard like they weren't his. "Are you happy?" He typed the words slowly. Simple. Honest. Weak. Then he deleted them. Typed again. "I know. Just tell me why." Backspace. Gone. He sat in silence. The only sound was the low hum of the fridge and the quiet, poisonous tick of the kitchen clock. Instead, he opened a secure note on his work laptop. Started logging things, times, messages, inconsistencies. Not as a husband. As an analyst. October 7th, Marcus's vehicle parked outside residential barracks after 2,300 hours. October 9th, Elise left meeting early. Arrived home past midnight. Smelled like his cologne. By dawn, the list was 2 pages long. He wasn't confronting her. Not yet. A little smile touched her lips. Daniel watched it all. Quiet. Alert. He wasn't hurt now. He was focused. "You have lunch plans?" he asked casually. "Just a quick bite with some of the translation team. Nothing special." A lie. She never ate lunch with the translation team. Daniel nodded. Pretended not to notice. Pretended like her life wasn't unraveling beneath her. Pretended like he wasn't planning every move now. The message he didn't send? He realized it no longer mattered. The only message Elise would understand was the one he'd leave at the end of this, when everything she loved turned to ash. The next week, Daniel began listening. Not to Elise, but to her phone. Late one night, while she showered, He used a device a colleague once built, a small audio skimmer designed to mirror signals from Bluetooth headsets. It synced with her phone in under 20 seconds. That night, from the garage, he heard her whispering. No, he suspects nothing. Yes, I checked his files again. He's still logged into his dev suite. Don't worry, babe. He's harmless. Harmless. The word cut deeper than betrayal. It was erasure. She hadn't just stopped loving him. She had started to forget who he was. But Daniel hadn't forgotten a thing. He began running diagnostics on his own systems at work. That's when he found it. A remote access log traced to Elise's credentials. She had entered his interface server, downloaded blueprints, tampered with versions, military-grade designs, proprietary, restricted. He wasn't just being cheated on. He was being used. That night, Elise walked in and found Daniel staring at her, hollow-eyed, a quiet stillness in his expression that scared her. What? She asked. He didn't answer. Daniel, seriously, what? He stood, walked right past her, went into the garage. She followed. What the hell is going on? He turned, finally meeting her eyes. You ever hear the term ghost protocol? She blinked. What? It's when a system detects sabotage and silently begins wiping and rerouting all evidence of its original operator. Leaves no trace. No trail. Just a shadow. She frowned. You're not making any sense. He leaned in close, voice low. You will. Then he turned the light off and shut the door behind her. The bed had grown colder long before Daniel stopped sleeping in it. For the third night in a row, he lay on the couch, stiff-necked, staring at the ceiling while Elise slept soundly upstairs. Her footsteps never wandered into the living room anymore. No hushed, "Are you okay?" No blanket tossed over him. Just silence. Just space. On the fourth night, he didn't even bring a pillow. He didn't plan to sleep. He watched hours of security footage from the base, movements, vehicle logs, keycard entries. Each timestamp, each anomaly, he marked in red. Marcus entering restricted zones where he had no clearance. Elise accessing Daniel's terminal while he was in a staff meeting. One of his prototype files downloaded under Marcus's ID 3 days before it was finalized. They weren't just cheating. They were collaborating. At 3:14 a.m., Daniel got up and crept upstairs. He didn't enter the bedroom, just stood at the door. Elise murmured something in her sleep, turning over. Her hand draped over Marcus's hoodie, the one she now wore more than Daniel's. He turned away, heading for his study. If love was dead, betrayal buried it. But justice? Justice would be the tombstone. Daniel reached for the small, metallic SD card hidden in a fake AA battery in his drawer. He inserted it into his laptop. The files loaded slowly, heavy, like they knew the weight of what they carried. Hundreds of screen captures, message logs, and call recordings. All traced back weeks, maybe months. He clicked on one folder. /Elise logs, /private/ a video popped open. Not pornographic. Not romantic. Worse. Marcus and Elise, in a dim room, whispering. A map on the table. Military assets circled. Elise, they're changing the Helix directive. He doesn't know it yet, but Daniel's system controls the access points. Marcus, good. We push through. Once this is in play, we're unstoppable. Daniel froze. He replayed the audio. Again and again. This wasn't about an affair. They were setting him up. His designs, his fingerprints, were going to be attached to a mission that was being redirected without official approval. If it failed or exposed top-secret data, he'd take the fall. Daniel sat back, breath shaking. They weren't just betraying him. They were building a bomb and strapping his name to it. He met with Mason, an old colleague turned cybersecurity analyst, at a quiet cafe outside the city perimeter. You said you needed discretion, Mason muttered, sipping bad coffee. This isn't your style, Dan. People change, Daniel replied, sliding over a burner phone. I need you to trace IP logs. Encrypted threads. Someone's feeding info off base. Mason scrolled through the files. His eyebrows lifted. Jesus. You sure about this? Yes. If you're wrong, I'm not. Mason nodded. Slower now. You know, if you go down this road, if you're caught digging into a senior officer's trail, there's no way back, right? Daniel leaned forward, voice like steel. I'm not planning to come back. That night, he returned home to Elise waiting at the kitchen counter, wine in hand. You're late, she said, smiling faintly. Was out, he replied flatly, moving past her. You working on anything? Classified? Her voice was casual. A test. Daniel turned to her, measured. You know better than to ask that. She chuckled, stepping closer. Just making conversation. He smiled, for the first time in weeks. And in that moment, he decided, if the mission was a trap, then he'd spring it. But not for them. For him. The next morning, Daniel stared at himself in the bathroom mirror. The man looking back wasn't a husband. He wasn't even a man anymore. He was a contingency, a backup system with one job, to erase threats and leave no trace. The razor in his hand buzzed softly as he trimmed his beard, eyes locked on his reflection like he was trying to recognize the stranger staring back. Behind him, Elise's voice floated from the bedroom. Daniel, have you seen my security pass? He opened the cabinet, found it where he'd hidden it behind the painkillers, slid it back into her purse before she saw. Control. That's what mattered now. Every conversation, every motion in their home was now part of a performance. He'd wired the living room lamp with a mini audio loopback mic, and the bathroom vent carried a second signal straight to a private recorder under the floorboards. He watched her brush her hair. She watched herself smile. Neither of them looked real. Everything okay? She asked suddenly, meeting his eyes in the mirror. Daniel smiled. Of course. Why wouldn't it be? She studied him a moment too long. He turned away first. Later that night, Daniel pulled up her GPS data from the cloned app he'd installed on her phone. She wasn't at the translation wing. She was 14 miles out, at a nondescript roadside motel. He stared at the screen. A blue dot pulsing. Stationary. Room 112. He didn't follow. He just stared, for nearly an hour, until the dot began to move again, returning, unbothered, untouched by guilt. He shut his laptop, pulled a notebook from the drawer. At the top of the page, he wrote in capital letters, Operation, Mirror, and underneath, Objective, shatter everything they believe is safe. Daniel stood in the garage, a rusted fire barrel in front of him, an old shoebox tucked under one arm. Inside it, wedding cards, printed photos, anniversary receipts, concert tickets, a quiet museum of a life Elise had already left. He held the Polaroid of their first apartment, thumb brushing the corner. She was laughing in it, hair in her face, barefoot on the counter. She used to laugh like that only for him. He dropped it into the barrel. One by one, the memories followed, each item thrown into the flames with surgical detachment. No sobbing, no screams, just the sound of paper curling, ink turning to ash. Finally, he reached the last item, a silver necklace she hadn't worn in years. It wasn't valuable, not in dollars, but she'd cried when he gave it to her. He turned it over in his hand. His thumb brushed the small engraving on the back. For always. D. He stared for a long time. Then he dropped it in. The fire hissed like it recognized betrayal. The next morning, Elise walked into the garage as he was finishing a repair on the water heater. She paused, glancing at the now empty barrel. What was that? She asked casually. Old stuff. Cleaning out clutter, Daniel said without looking up. She hesitated. Like what? He looked up finally. Straight at her. Things I don't need anymore. Elise's eyes flickered. She opened her mouth, then shut it. Daniel went back to work. She lingered, but didn't press. The silence said enough. She'd felt it, the shift. He wasn't trying to fix the marriage anymore. He was preparing to bury it. Daniel's opportunity came quicker than expected. Marcus left a strategy briefing early. Daniel, already in the data center on a fake maintenance call, watched him walk across the courtyard toward his Jeep. He moved fast. 5 minutes later, the back door of the vehicle clicked open. Daniel slipped inside, crouched low, gloved hands already working. From his coat pocket, he pulled a slim black burner phone, preloaded with encrypted chats, anonymous routing logs, and a contact list straight out of an international leak. He tucked it beneath the passenger seat, securing it with a strip of magnetic tape. Then he wiped the door handle and vanished. The next morning, Marcus's Jeep was flagged at base security. "Colonel, we detected an unauthorized device in your vehicle. You'll need to come with us." "What the hell are you talking about?" Marcus demanded. They showed him the burner, showed him the encrypted messages. One of them linked to a restricted NATO file. He went pale. "I didn't write that." No one believed him. Not yet. Meanwhile, Daniel watched from the second-floor window of Building C. He sipped black coffee. No sugar. Security escorted Marcus across the lot, arguing, sweat building under his collar. Elise appeared, rushing toward them. Her voice was urgent. Her eyes darted toward Daniel's window. He didn't move, didn't blink, just whispered to himself. "Checkmate's not when the king is taken. It's when he realizes he can't run." For the first time in weeks, Elise didn't kiss Daniel goodbye. She left in a hurry, muttering something about a last-minute debrief. No makeup, no excuses, just keys, heels, and tension hanging in the hallway like fog. Daniel stood at the window again. He didn't wave. He opened the encrypted recorder hidden in the lamp base. The audio from last night loaded in bursts of static and whispers. One clip stood out. Elise, whispering, urgent, "He's changing. I don't think I can control him anymore." Marcus, then distract him. "Sleep with him if you have to. Just keep him busy." Daniel sat still for a long time. That sentence didn't hit like a punch. It landed like a knife, slowly twisted. Back in his lab, Daniel accessed the satellite mirror logs from the night before. A routine exercise for most, but he had programmed a hidden camera command in a weather drone hovering 200 clicks offshore. He had aimed it, precisely, at a quiet motel Elise had visited 3 times in the last month. He paused the footage at 21:47. Marcus and Elise, standing too close. Elise handing him something, a flash drive. Frame by frame, Daniel isolated it. His drive. The one she said she couldn't find. The one he used to store contingency protocols and inactive AI scripts. She wasn't just betraying his heart. She was stealing his intellect. That night, he sat at the dinner table alone. 2 plates, one untouched. When Elise finally walked in at 10:32 p.m., her blouse crumpled and lips slightly smeared, he didn't look up. "You waited?" she asked. "No," he replied. "Just thinking." She walked past, paused, turned, then offered a cold smile. "About us." He smiled without looking at her. "No, Elise. I stopped thinking about us the moment you handed him my legacy." She froze, just for a second. Then she disappeared upstairs. Daniel listened to every step. She didn't run. She was too arrogant for that. Inside the secure bunker 3 days later, Colonel Trent stood in front of the Helix strike simulation board. The room was tense. Technicians ran diagnostics. Red lines bled across the screen, showing system latency where there should be none. "Why is the automated response dragging by 0.8 seconds? Marcus barked. "Unknown, sir," one tech said. "The satellite relay isn't syncing with the AI override." Daniel raised a hand. "It's syncing, Colonel," he said smoothly. "But it's been redirected to Protocol 17, a failsafe designed to prevent override corruption during live combat." Marcus frowned. "There's no Protocol 17 in Helix." "There is now," Daniel replied. "It was approved in the last firmware patch." Marcus turned to Elise, standing beside him like a loyal aide. Her face went pale. "Did you authorize this?" he asked her. She hesitated. "No, I wasn't made aware of it." Lies always land louder when panic follows. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "Strange. I submitted it through her clearance log." He tapped a few keys. A list of digital approvals appeared. Elise's name was at the top. Timestamped. Logged. Irrefutable. Marcus looked at her. "What the hell are you doing?" Elise snapped. "I didn't sign that." But it was too late. Everyone in the room had already seen the screen. Later, in the hallway, Daniel stepped into Elise's path. She didn't smile this time. "What are you trying to do?" she hissed. I don't need to try, Elise. I'm already doing it. She leaned in close. You think you're clever? You think you can destroy us? No, Daniel said softly. I think I can let you destroy each other. He walked away. For once, Elise didn't follow. 2 nights later, Daniel sat alone in the server room, lights low, coffee black. He stared at the countdown on his hidden console. Operation Helix, D. 3 to 17 to 48 to 52. The modified protocols were buried deep, untraceable, encrypted, and authenticated under Elise's credentials. The entire AI core had been subtly rerouted to send false telemetry to the command center once the mission launched. It wouldn't crash the operation. It would misfire it. And when it did, NATO's audit trail would lead right to Marcus and Elise, both of whom had unknowingly signed off on systems they couldn't even begin to understand. Daniel closed the terminal. Not with a flourish. With calm. Deliberate. Like a surgeon sewing up his last patient. At home, Elise tried to play normal again. She set the table. Lit candles. Music low. Thought we could talk. Daniel sat down. Nodded. Said nothing. I know things have been off, she began. We've both changed. We've both made mistakes. He watched her, expressionless. You remember that trip to Berlin, she said, a nostalgic smile creeping in. That street violinist who played Claire de Lune? I couldn't stop crying, Elise, Daniel said quietly, cutting her off. She stopped. You don't need to lie anymore. We're past that. Her eyes welled slightly. For a moment, maybe she believed her own performance. But Daniel knew better. You're right, she whispered. We are past that. She reached for his hand. He let her, because he wanted her to think she still had time. But the countdown had already begun. The base's server tower was locked behind level 4 security. But Daniel didn't need keys. He built the access protocols. He moved at 2:13 a.m. Cameras looped for exactly 9 minutes, just enough time to slip in, override the biometric delay, and reach the junction router that filtered Marcus Trent's digital footprint. One drive, one mission, clone every byte of Marcus's digital life. Daniel inserted the tool, a microsiphon that could extract mirrored data in real time, leaving no trace behind. The screen flickered. Marcus's inbox opened. 4,301 messages. Daniel filtered for encryption protocols. The cursor blinked as he typed. Keyword, red line. 17 hits. He scrolled and froze. Confidential, modified Helix parameters, unsanctioned redirect confirmed. Attached was a voice memo. Marcus, we reroute the Helix strike on my authority. No one needs to know the target changed unless it works. If it doesn't, blame the engineer. He's got the access, the knowledge, and the motive. Daniel stared, the light of the screen burning into his eyes. They weren't just setting him up as a scapegoat. They were betting the entire operation on it. He downloaded everything. Then, he did something unexpected. He inserted a second tool, one that overwrote Marcus's login trails with Daniel's signature. From this point forward, every unauthorized command Marcus issued would trace back to himself. When it was done, Daniel stepped into the shadows. He didn't just hack Marcus. He became him. 2 days later, Elise came home early. Daniel was in the study, pretending to read. She leaned in the doorway, arms folded. Marcus is panicking, she said. He didn't look up. He thinks someone's inside his system. Daniel marked his page. Calm. Patient. Maybe someone is. She narrowed her eyes. That wasn't a joke. I wasn't laughing. Silence stretched between them like a wire ready to snap. Elise broke first. He's starting to think we pushed too far. He thinks I pushed too far. Daniel stood slowly, walked past her, pausing just long enough to whisper, then maybe you did. He didn't wait for her reaction. Later that night, Daniel sat in the server bay alone. Under red light, he scrolled through every new login Marcus made in the last 48 hours. Each one now echoed back with Daniel's own access keys, a mirrored echo loop so clean that even a NATO-level forensic sweep would conclude Marcus was manipulating the Helix codes alone. And then Daniel did something bold. He added one more file. A dummy plan. A what-if blueprint for a false flag strike, with Marcus's voice dictating strategy. Completely fabricated, but authenticated with his biometric tone signature. Just enough to warrant arrest, not just emotion. He encrypted it and stored it on a flash drive under Elise's desk drawer. She'd find it. Too late. The day before the Helix launch, Marcus called an emergency war room briefing. Elise sat to his left, face pale. Daniel to his right, composed. "Someone's inside our system," Marcus said, pacing like a caged wolf. "The AI's acting erratic. Files are shifting, approvals changing. Someone's altering Helix from the inside. Maybe it's corruption," Elise offered. "A virus." Marcus turned sharply. "A virus doesn't forge signatures." His eyes flicked to Daniel. "Who else has that kind of access?" Daniel didn't blink. "You do." A silence dropped like a grenade. Marcus stepped closer. "Are you accusing me of sabotage?" "I'm stating fact," Daniel said, his voice low and sharp. "Your ID is linked to at least 6 unauthorized script changes in the last 72 hours. Unless you're being impersonated," he trailed off. Marcus stared at him. Calculating. "Why would I sabotage my own mission?" he snapped. Daniel shrugged. "I could ask the same question." That night, Daniel sent an anonymous message from a secure server to base command. It contained one file, the faked false flag plan from Marcus's voice signature. He didn't include a name. Didn't need to. The file spoke for itself. Marcus would be flagged by dawn. And Elise? She would learn the hardest way possible. That you never cheat on a man who understands every circuit, every protocol, every weakness in your world. By 0900 hours, whispers filled the corridors like smoke. Rumors of data breaches. Secret plans. Unauthorized reroutes. Marcus entered the control room pale, hair unkempt, his uniform slightly wrinkled, a rare lapse. His voice cracked on the first line of the briefing. "We've got a breach." No one spoke. He slammed his fist on the console. "We've got a mole. And if command doesn't start listening to me, Helix will implode on launch." Daniel sat in the back row, watching, taking mental notes. "Colonel," one officer said cautiously, "all unauthorized changes trace back to your login keys. Because someone cloned me." Marcus snapped. "You think I'd leave a digital trail if I was behind it?" Eyes turned. Doubt spread. Elise pulled Marcus aside afterward, jaw tight. "You're losing them. They've already turned," he hissed. "They think I'm a liability." She shook her head. "Then prove them wrong. Pin it on Daniel. He's quiet. He's smart. But no one sees him coming. He's perfect scapegoat material." Marcus blinked. Something flickered in his eyes. "You knew this could happen," he said slowly. "You wanted it to." "No. You said he's harmless, Elise." She opened her mouth, closed it. The silence between them now felt dangerous. Not cold, not distant, sharp. Meanwhile, Daniel sat at his workstation, decrypting the final sequence. He heard the muffled shouting through the walls. He didn't need to hear words. He knew exactly what Marcus was accusing her of, and he knew exactly where it was going. The cracks had started. All he had to do was keep applying pressure. That night, Elise lit candles. She made dinner, opened red wine, wore his favorite black dress, the one with the deep neckline and zero sincerity. Daniel played along. They clinked glasses. "To fresh starts," she said, smiling too hard. He raised his glass, but didn't drink. She leaned forward. "I know things have been off, but I think we can fix this." "I'm sure we can," Daniel replied calmly. "You just need to trust me." "I do," she said. "Lie." Her eyes were scanning, watching his movements. Her smile wasn't love. It was assessment. Daniel stood. "Let me get dessert." In the kitchen, he tapped his wristband. The signal was clean. Her necklace, a gift he'd given 2 weeks earlier, was wired. Every word they'd spoken had been recorded and transmitted to a secure drive. But that wasn't enough. He opened the drawer. Inside, the fake flash drive containing the false flag blueprint. He smiled and planted it in her purse, just barely zipped, then returned with dessert. Back at the table, Elise touched his hand. "I want us to go away after Helix. Somewhere quiet. Just you and me." Daniel looked up. Eyes soft. voice even. Elise, he said. There's no after anymore. She blinked. What do you mean? He took a slow bite of cake. You'll understand soon. At 0300 hours, Daniel was called to the perimeter gate. Marcus was already there, hair damp with sweat, pacing like a man walking off a nightmare. We need to talk, he growled. Daniel said nothing. Marcus dragged him behind the munitions tower, away from the cameras. I know what you're doing, he hissed. You think you're clever. Hiding behind encryption, playing the long game. You're not the first brainy coward I've dealt with. Daniel stared at him, calm. You're sweating, Colonel. You think I'm scared of you? I think you're scared of the truth. Marcus lunged, fist cocked, but Daniel stepped back easily. Careful, Daniel said softly. I'd hate for Command to see you assaulting the only man keeping Helix from falling apart. Marcus froze. You don't win, Cross, he whispered. You're not built for war. Daniel leaned in. I'm not at war, Marcus. I'm building your funeral, and you're the one hammering in the nails. At 7:12 a.m., Marcus's personal phone rang. No ID. No trace. He answered anyway. Voice, they know. They're watching. Click. The call ended before he could respond. He stood in his office, knuckles white around the phone. The paranoia wasn't just seeping in, it was drowning him. He checked the drawers. Rechecked his security codes. None had changed. Nothing had been physically moved. But something felt off, as if the air had shifted. Then, for the first time, he checked under the seat of his own Jeep. There it was. The burner phone Daniel had planted. Exactly where security had found it before. But now he was sure he didn't put it there. Son of a, he smashed it on the pavement. Pieces flew. Too late. Meanwhile, Daniel watched security footage of the moment Marcus found the phone. Rewound it. Watched it again. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply logged the timestamp. Then moved to the next phase. Elise. At 9:50 a.m., Elise opened her purse in her office. She was looking for lip balm. What she found instead was the flash drive. She froze. Her breathing quickened. Her eyes darted toward the hallway. No one. She plugged it in. The file opened automatically. Her face drained of color. Marcus's voice. We'll reroute the strike. If it works, we take the credit. If not, pin it on Cross. His wife's already in our pocket. Her own voice. He suspects nothing. I'll keep him distracted. The file was time-stamped a week prior. She never said those words. Her hand trembled. She yanked the drive out, shoved it in her pocket, and stormed out of her office. Daniel saw her from across the courtyard, moving fast, almost running. Right into the one place he knew she'd go, Marcus's office. Inside, she threw the flash drive on his desk. What is this? She demanded. Marcus looked at it like it might explode. You tell me, he snapped. It's fake. Then why are you so scared? Elise stared at him, tears pooling in her eyes. You planted this. You're setting me up. Marcus stood slowly. No, he said. If anyone's being set up, it's both of us. They looked at each other like strangers now, not allies, not lovers. Just two survivors on a ship taking water fast. Back in the control center, Daniel activated the final script trigger. The Helix AI would now follow a mirrored flight path that led nowhere, a null zone. Once the launch executed, the system would register a successful fire, but no hit. Command would assume a software failure. But the logs? The logs would show unauthorized redirection by Marcus, approved by Elise. It was airtight. Elise sat in the cafeteria, hand gripping her coffee like it was the last stable object in her world. Daniel approached her table. Mind if I sit? She didn't answer. He sat anyway. Rough morning, he asked, voice calm. Her eyes shot up. What are you doing? Just being a good husband. She leaned in. You're doing this. I don't know how, but I know it's you. Daniel stirred his coffee. Doing what? Her voice dropped to a whisper. You planted that drive. You edited those files. He looked at her, really looked, and said, quietly, if someone betrayed you, Elise, would you feel guilty? She blinked. Or would you feel like they finally gave you permission to stop pretending? She stared at him like she didn't recognize the man across from her. Because she didn't. Not anymore. Daniel stood on the helipad at sunrise, staring at the missile crate being secured onto the strike jet. Operation Helix was hours away. Command was nervous, not visibly, but Daniel could read it in their clipped responses, the rapid-fire cross-checking, the tension in the air like static before a lightning storm. The systems were go. Targets locked. Pilots briefed. Everything was working. Because he had made it that way. Every diagnostic had been run through Daniel's manipulated protocols. They'd show nothing wrong. Because technically, there was nothing wrong until the missile fired and hit nothing but sky. And when the failure occurred, the logs would sing. Marcus would burn. Elise would fall. And Daniel would vanish. At home, Elise packed in silence. She told Daniel she was being relocated after the mission. Just standard protocol. He didn't answer. She stood at the door, suitcase by her side. You won't say goodbye? He looked at her, really looked, and said nothing. That silence hurt her more than any insult ever could. And he knew it. Later that night, Daniel stood in the garage, staring at a photo. The last one of them before the affair, before the lies. He didn't burn it. He folded it, put it in the glove box. Not because he wanted to remember, but because he wanted a reminder that no matter what tomorrow brought, he never betrayed first. At 3:16 a.m., Daniel secured line bust. Private number. Encrypted connection. He answered. A male voice. Unfamiliar. Calm. Dangerous. You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Cross. Daniel's spine stiffened. Who is this? Let's just say I work for someone who has a vested interest in keeping Helix on target. A pause. Static. We know what Elise gave Marcus. We also know what you gave Elise. Daniel's blood ran cold. He hadn't told anyone about the microcode hidden in the flash drive, the one not even Elise knew she passed along. A backdoor command embedded in the Helix targeting system. A failsafe. His failsafe. You're bluffing, Daniel said. Am I? The voice chuckled. You triggered it the moment you activated Mirror Protocol. Daniel's heart thudded. Mirror Protocol was his own creation. No one else had access. No one. Except, check the last upload, Daniel. You missed something. Click. The line went dead. He raced to his secure drive, scanned the logs, and froze. A second command had been injected into the system after his last overwrite. A third player. Someone had piggybacked off his sabotage using his blind spots, his arrogance, to reroute the Helix payload to a real target. One not in any NATO briefing. One that, if hit, would trigger war. Daniel felt the weight of it instantly. He'd been used. Not just betrayed by Elise. Not just hunted by Marcus. He had been manipulated by someone outside the chessboard entirely. He ran the data trace through his private terminal. The piggybacked command came from an encrypted relay bouncing off Luxembourg, then Spain, then Tel Aviv. A black site. Untraceable. Intentionally so. He dug deeper and found the name of the relay origin. NCI. Network Command Intelligence. A private contractor. Shadow Division. Not officially NATO. Not officially anything. And the registered user ID? E. Cross. Daniel reeled. Elise hadn't just been working with Marcus. She'd been working with them. All along. Marcus was the fall guy. Daniel was the engineer. But Elise? She was the recruiter. The infiltrator. The handler. The final betrayal hit like a blade across the spine. The emails. The wine. The fake affection. All of it, a grooming process. Elise didn't fall in love with Marcus. She didn't fall out of love with Daniel. She never loved either of them. Daniel staggered back from the console, breathing hard. And for the first time in this war, he didn't feel calm. He felt something deeper. Worse. Pure, white-hot vengeance. They wanted a ghost? Now they'd get one. But not the kind that haunts. The kind that erases. Daniel stared at the screen as the trace finished compiling. User, E. Cross access point. Red zone. 7 NCI GhostNet Division Red Zone. 7 was off record. A black node known only to NATO ghost contractors, groups not bound by military laws, treaties, or morality. Which meant one thing. Elise wasn't just a pawn. She was deep cover. Everything she'd lived with him, the marriage, the house, the love, had been part of a long play. He wasn't just collateral. He was the project. He opened a file hidden deep within his old engineer logs, a tracker tagged Phoenix fallback. Not just sabotage. An erasure protocol. Everything Elise had stolen would be overwritten, not deleted, not destroyed. Rewritten with false data, bogus logs, and decoy intel that would lead anyone who accessed it straight into a dead zone. He activated it. Then he picked up his old phone, not the one tied to Helix or Command, but the untraceable, line-cut satellite burner buried beneath the garage floorboards. He dialed a number he swore he'd never use. When the voice answered, he said just 2 words, "I'm in." Elise sat at her desk that morning, eyes bloodshot, fingers trembling. She hadn't slept. Couldn't. She'd rewatched the audio file 3 times. Still couldn't prove it was fake. She'd accused Marcus. He'd accused her back. Now, for the first time, she was truly alone. She reached under the desk for her safe folder, a backup of her handler logs and mission objectives. Notes she'd been ordered to destroy. But it wasn't there. Just a single note. Typed. Plain. Folded once. Nice try. D. She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. He knew. He knew everything. And if he was in her files, he could already be in the command systems. She grabbed her comm device, fingers trembling. Command, this is E. Cross. I have a code black compromise. Repeat, code black. We've been breached internally by, her screen flickered. The line went dead. The display simply blinked back 2 words, too late. At 0400 hours, Daniel returned to the same secure vault Elise had used to extract his prototype months ago. Except this time, he didn't come to take something back. He came to leave something behind. Inside, he placed a decoy module marked T-145, adaptive AI trigger. It was blank, loaded only with dummy code designed to flag intrusion. He left it right where Elise's network would find it and download it. And when they accessed it, their entire system would light up like a Christmas tree to NATO Command, not NCI. He wasn't just framing Elise anymore. He was unmasking her. Later that day, Command Intelligence summoned Elise. She entered the room to find 4 high-ranking officers, stone-faced, silent. "What's going on?" she asked. No answer. Only a screen. Live trace detected. NCI red zone. 7 Elise Cross. Unauthorized AI transfer. She blinked, stumbled. That's not accurate. You're under internal review, one general said. Effective immediately, you're relieved of field duty. Wait. Someone's framing me, tell it to the tribunal. They left her standing there. Frozen. Unarmed. Unbelieved. Across the compound, Daniel watched her through the tinted glass of the West Hall. He didn't smirk. He didn't celebrate. He just whispered to himself, "That was for the years I spent thinking you loved me." Daniel knew they'd send someone to check. And when they did, when the data team from Command ran diagnostics on the decoy drive, they'd trip his second trigger. The moment the files were accessed, the entire Helix control log rerouted itself to show a phantom operation, one that mirrored Elise's exact clearance, operating from her IP signature. Initiating an override that matched the same timestamp her voice request was recorded to trigger 3 months ago. Except that override never really happened. Daniel had created the voice sample himself. From scratch. Dozens of chopped syllables from Elise's debrief recordings, recompiled into a sentence that sounded perfect. Initiate shadow redirect. Run Phoenix protocol. Approval. Cross. Echo. It didn't just sound real. It sounded pre-planned. That night, he waited by the flight hangar, watching as Elise was escorted out by 2 officers, arms stiff at her sides, jaw clenched, defiance flashing in her eyes like a dying fire. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded. "You'll be briefed at base command," one of the guards muttered. She twisted back, and for the first time, locked eyes with Daniel across the compound. Her lips parted slightly, not to speak, but because she understood. He'd done this. He was the ghost. And ghosts don't love. They erase. The Helix launch was less than 12 hours away. Inside the Central Operations Theater, The screen showed a pulsing countdown. Tension moved through the room like voltage. Everyone whispered. Everyone watched Marcus. He looked exhausted, disheveled. Nothing like the pristine warhawk who'd strutted in 6 months ago. When the general approached him, a hard folder in hand, Marcus braced. "Colonel Trent," the general said coldly. "Step into the debriefing chamber." Marcus glanced at Daniel, seated behind the glass, calmly observing system flow. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. Marcus hesitated. "Is this about Cross?" "No," the general said. "This is about you." In the chamber, Marcus was shown everything: the burner phone logs, the forged communications, the phantom override, Elise's false directive, and above all, the accusation that Marcus led the unsanctioned data extraction. "What the hell is this?" Marcus barked. "I never approved any of this." "You did," the general replied, "according to the records. They're fake. Then you better prove it. Fast." Outside, Daniel leaned against the railing of the hangar catwalk. He could hear the raised voices echoing behind the glass. He whispered under his breath, "And now, we watch the empire fall." 3 hours later, Daniel walked into a quiet corner of the base mess hall and found Marcus waiting. Unshaven, gaunt, furious. "You set me up." Daniel sat down calmly, setting a folded napkin in front of him. "No, you set yourself up. I just adjusted the lighting." Marcus gritted his teeth. "You think you're some kind of hero?" "No," Daniel said, eyes hard. "Heroes fight for what's right. I fought for what was left." Marcus leaned in, fists tight on the table. "She told me you were weak." Daniel gave a small, cold smile. "And you believed her?" Silence. Then Marcus whispered, "Why?" Daniel paused. "Because you took something from me that you didn't earn. Not my wife. Not her loyalty. My life. You stepped into it like you were entitled. And now you'll lose yours like you never saw it coming." Marcus stared at him, chest heaving. "I'll clear my name," he muttered. "Even if I have to take you down with me." Daniel stood slowly. "You won't take me down. You don't even know what direction I'm coming from." Then he turned and walked out, leaving Marcus alone, stewing, broken. Elise sat in an interrogation room now. Her hair was messy, her blazer stained with sweat. A single recorder on the table blinked red. "You planted it," she whispered. "That flash drive, the audio files, it was all fake." The interrogator said nothing. "You're being played. He's doing this, Daniel. He's brilliant, but twisted. He knows systems better than he knows people." Still silence. Then the officer slid a document toward her. An affidavit signed off on Elise's past involvement with NCI. Buried records. Expunged, but never deleted. Her eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" "From someone who knows your entire playbook," the officer said. "From someone who built the system you tried to exploit." She sat back in her chair. A slow, hollow laugh escaped her lips. He really was always 10 steps ahead. And for the first time, she looked scared. Marcus paced his quarters like a trapped animal. He'd appealed to command, demanded a forensic sweep. He got it. And when the results came back, they only dug his grave deeper. Not only had the orders been traced to his terminal, but his own voice was logged confirming them. "Run Phoenix protocol." Confirmed. M. Trent. A perfect match. Exactly what Daniel had programmed. A clean splice, crafted from dozens of recorded staff meetings and security clips. Now, Marcus wasn't just a man accused of misconduct. He was a traitor on paper. He stood before the mirror and punched it. Glass shattered. Blood dripped from his knuckles. That night, command placed him on restricted access. Daniel passed him in the corridor. Marcus didn't speak. He just looked at him, defeated, and maybe, just maybe, understanding something he'd never understood before. He'd been hunted by someone who never needed a weapon to kill him. At 1:33 a.m., Daniel sent the final file. It wasn't addressed to command or intelligence. It was sent to internal affairs. Quietly, anonymously. Attached, a full walkthrough of the Helix sabotage, logs, timestamps, synthetic voice overlays, layered with command clearance signatures. And at the center of it all, a profile titled Cross Elise. Field operative. NCI liaison. Tier 4 access. The file hit like a bomb. BIOS 600. Elise was taken from the interrogation room and moved to isolation. Full blackout. Inside, she pounded the walls. This isn't over. You're protecting him. He's the real threat. But they didn't believe her. No one did. Daniel had predicted this too. The moment she'd flip, the moment she'd scream the truth. But her name was now in the system as NCI, and that meant only one thing to command. Everything she said was a deception by default. Her truth had arrived too late. Just as Daniel planned. Marcus was in the barracks when they came. 2 MPs. No warning. He was cuffed, dragged out under the white-blue light of morning. Around him, whispers echoed. He thrashed once, just once, screaming, "This is a setup. I'm not the traitor. He is." Cross IS. But the gates slammed before anyone could finish listening. And across the airfield, Daniel stood watching. Not with joy, not with satisfaction, but with calm. Because revenge wasn't about fury anymore. It was about clarity. That same hour, a military official entered Daniel's lab. Cross. Command's been informed of your support during the Helix breach. Your role in flagging the internal threat. Daniel didn't look up from the console. I just did my job. The official nodded. You'll be debriefed and reassigned. Copy that. Good work, son. Daniel nodded. Said nothing else. Elise sat in her windowless cell, eyes red, voice raw. She had screamed for hours. Now she just sat. A voice crackled on the overhead speaker. Cold. Distorted. You tried to rewrite my life. She looked up, recognized it. You used me like I was a mission. You broke everything we were, just to feed your handlers. Silence. But you forgot what I built. I didn't fight wars, Elise. I designed the systems that end them. Her lip trembled. Daniel, you're off the map now. No teams coming. No asset recovery. No exit plan. Static hissed. Then, softly, goodbye, Elise. The line went dead. And for the first time since this started, she wept. Elise stared at the metallic wall across from her, jaw locked, nails bitten down. She'd once been a master manipulator. A handler. A ghost within NATO's walls. Now she was invisible for a different reason. No more calls. No more network. No more allies. Her cell was silent. Until the door hissed open. A man in a black suit entered. No insignia. No name. He set a folder on the table. Unlabeled. Elise didn't flinch. You want a deal? She said, voice flat. The man opened the folder slowly. Photos slid out. Surveillance images. Her and Marcus. Her and Daniel. Her alone in the secure room. Lines connected. Threads tied. One word in red pen. Asset disavowed. She blinked. You're not here to make a deal, she whispered. He leaned in. No. I'm here to make sure you don't speak. You're going to kill me? No, he said. That would be a mercy. He slid the folder back into his briefcase. Then he left. The door sealed. And Elise finally understood. She hadn't been abandoned. She'd been erased. Daniel sat at his desk, the air thick with machine noise and low chatter. In front of him, a freshly issued security badge. New division. New title. No mention of Helix. No trace of the past. His official record now read, Cross, D. Reassigned to R&D Command/Remote AI Systems. No pending evaluations. He'd become a ghost in his own system. Exactly as he wanted. Mason, the hacker who'd helped him months ago, called him on the secure line. You good? He asked. Daniel sipped his coffee. I'm out. You sure? That data trail's still warm if anyone digs deep enough. Daniel smiled slightly. No one's left to dig. He shut the laptop. One last file remained. A private folder labeled EliseOPS/terminate. He opened it. Hovered his cursor over delete. Paused. Then clicked. The files disappeared. Permanently. He didn't need to keep the proof anymore. The mission was complete. Weeks passed. The war faded into memory. No press coverage. No tribunals. Just rumors. Marcus had been transferred to a low-security base as a consultant. No clearance. No weapons. No command. He spent his days alone, teaching mid-level tactics to rookies who barely knew his name. At night, he drank, watched old recordings, replayed Helix briefings like they were therapy. But the one name he never spoke? Daniel Cross. Not once. Because he knew. Trying to clear his name would only trigger more noise from a man who controlled every circuit in the system. He was alive, but forgotten. Exactly the kind of punishment Daniel designed. Lisbon. Sunlight on tiled rooftops. Narrow streets winding like veins through a city that never rushed. Daniel stepped off the train with a small duffel bag and a new ID. David Cole. Former engineer. Now consultant. No attachments. He walked through the plaza past a cafe where jazz spilled through open windows. No one knew his story. No one asked. And for once, that felt good. He found a small flat above a bookstore. Quiet. Cheap. His only tech, a laptop, a stripped-down AI processor, and a hard drive the size of a coin, the last backup of his original code. He placed it in a drawer, locked it, then stood at the window, watching the people pass. Free. Not happy, but free. And that, after everything, was enough. The envelope arrived in Lisbon without a return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. Careful strokes. Familiar loops. Elise's handwriting. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, the letter in his hand for 10 minutes before he opened it. I won't beg. Not because I'm proud, that's gone. But because I know you never wanted an apology. Only the truth. You were always better than me, Daniel. Smarter. Kinder. I used that. They used me. I let them. And maybe the worst part is, I don't even know when I stopped pretending to love you and started pretending I ever did. I hope you're free. I hope you're somewhere quiet. I hope you became something better than what we turned you into. Daniel read it once. Then again. Then slowly folded it, placed it in a drawer, and never opened it again. 3 months later, Daniel stood outside Fort Halbert. Just a civilian now. No pass. No badge. Just a name erased from every system behind those gates. He didn't ask to enter. He just stood there, looking. The place felt smaller now. Less important. Like a stage after the actors had gone home. He walked the perimeter. Past the old lab window. Past the spot where he'd watched Elise and Marcus that first night. He didn't feel anger. Or sadness. Just distance. Like remembering someone else's story. At the gate, a guard stepped forward. Sir? You can't loiter here. Daniel nodded. I know. He turned and walked away. Some ghosts don't haunt the places they died. They haunt the places where they survived. Back in Lisbon, Daniel opened a small wooden box. Inside, his last memento. Marcus Trent's ID badge. Worn, cracked, still magnetic. He held it between his fingers. The weight of it was more symbolic than physical. The man who swaggered through corridors with this on his chest now filed training reports for cadets who didn't respect him. Daniel slid the badge into a gap between 2 old books on his shelf. Buried it. He didn't need to destroy it. The war was already over. And he'd won every battle. The ones that mattered. And the ones that left scars. Daniel took a teaching contract at a local university under his new name. 1 course. 1 classroom. Twice a week. Artificial systems logic. Theories on failsafe design. Clean. Simple. Safe. Until the girl in the back row raised her hand one day after class. Professor Cole? Do you think a system could ever become too perfect? Daniel blinked. What do you mean? I mean, if someone designed a system that accounted for every variable, if it was too good at predicting outcomes, could it hurt the wrong person by accident? Daniel stared at her. 1,000 memories behind his eyes. Then smiled gently. Systems don't hurt people. People program them to. She nodded. Thoughtful. But as she left the room, she glanced back at him again. Eyes narrowing, just a little. Like she knew something. Or recognized something. Daniel sat at his desk as the rain tapped against the windows like static. The cafe below had closed. The streets were wet and empty, a mirror to how he often felt now, full but quiet, calm yet volatile. He opened his laptop and drafted an email. To Elise Cross subject. Nothing. You were right about one thing. I didn't want an apology. I wanted honesty. And maybe just once, for you to choose me without calculation. Asterisk, but that's not who we were. That's not who you were. I'm not bitter anymore. But I'm not the man you married either. I became something else, because of what you gave me. Asterisk war disguised as love. Strategy wrapped in intimacy. You lost more than me. You lost the one man who saw you when you weren't trying to manipulate a room. Goodbye, Elise. And thank you for the clarity. He stared at it, hovered over send, then hit delete, and shut the laptop. Some words aren't meant to be heard, just written. Professor David Cole, as they knew him, was invited to speak at a European cybersecurity summit in Munich. He declined twice, then finally accepted. He stood on stage in a dark hall, floodlights washing over the podium. The future of warfare, he began, won't be won by bullets, but by input. By who controls the data, the access, the choices the system makes before a human ever sees the screen. He scanned the crowd. Some were bored, some were intrigued. But one man in the back, tall, shaved head, expensive suit, didn't look like press or academic. He didn't clap when it ended. He simply nodded once, acknowledging something deeper. Daniel left before the applause died down. And as he walked down the hotel hallway later that night, he saw a note had been slipped under his door. No words, just a symbol. NCI. Back in Lisbon, Daniel expanded his class. Students began quoting him, sharing clips, calling him the ghost behind the logic. He hated the attention, but part of him needed the relevance. He started working with local NGOs, designing open-source fail-safe networks for hospitals and refugee communications. He'd built weapons his whole life. Now he was building shields. One night, a student approached him after class, the same girl who'd asked about perfect systems. You ever work in defense? She asked, voice casual. Daniel paused. I was around it. For a while. You ever lose anyone to it? He considered her. Myself. She nodded. That's a good answer. She left before he could ask what she meant. Later that evening, Daniel checked his email. A blank message. No sender. No header. Only one attachment. Phoenix_report_final. He didn't open it. He just stared at it for hours. Daniel walked through the market when he heard it. A passing whisper from two tourists near the bakery. Yeah, that was him. Colonel Trent. Shot himself in a training facility last week. Quiet cover-up. Daniel froze. He turned, subtly listening. Apparently, he was under internal review for months. Something about a sabotage case. But it all disappeared. The whole unit got folded into black budget stuff. Back home, Daniel searched for confirmation. Nothing. Not even a death notice. But the deeper he dug into old clearance trails, the more he saw redactions where Marcus Trent used to be. A memory gone cold. A ghost wiped clean. Daniel sat back in his chair. Not victorious. Not guilty. Just still. Because sometimes revenge doesn't end with a bang. It ends with a file missing from a drawer and no one left to say the name. In a sealed tribunal room far from any map, Elise Cross sat under fluorescent lights. No nameplate. No lawyer. Just questions. She wore a black jumpsuit, no rank, no title. Across the table sat a woman in civilian dress. Composed. Cold. Did you authorize the transfer of Cross's system intelligence to NCI? No. Did you collaborate with Colonel Trent on a redirection of Helix protocol? No. The woman tapped a file, thick with logs, voice samples, cross-reference data. You're aware this information exists. Elise nodded once. Fabricated. By someone who knew the systems better than anyone. You mean your husband? She didn't flinch. He's not my husband anymore. The woman smiled slightly. That part, we believe. When they escorted her out, Elise whispered to the guard beside her. Do you think he's watching? The guard didn't respond. But she knew. Daniel didn't watch anymore. He didn't need to. He'd already seen everything. Late one evening, Daniel received a message routed through a secure server. It bypassed every firewall. Triggered no alerts. Just a line of text. We didn't expect you to win. But we were curious what you'd become if you did. Then, an attached file, Protocol Mirror, Phase 2. No signature. But Daniel understood immediately. This wasn't NCI contacting him. It was whoever hired them. He didn't open the file. He copied it onto a separate drive, locked it in a safe. Some invitations are better left unanswered. Later, as he stood in his window, watching the Lisbon skyline fade into dusk, he whispered, "You wanted a weapon. I became a firewall instead." Daniel began receiving handwritten letters. No return address. Always postmarked from a different city. Always written in ink. Some were philosophical. Others, poetic. One simply read, "If the system turns on the architect, who will build the next one?" Another, "Your silence is your clearest signal." We heard it. Loudly. He never replied. But he kept them in a box, labeled only, Aftermath. One day, the letters stopped. He didn't notice immediately. But when he did, he felt something. Not relief. Not regret. Just the hollow stillness of someone else giving up first. In class, one of Daniel's students, a quiet, sharp boy named Paolo, stayed behind after lecture. "You think peace is possible, Professor?" he asked. Daniel looked at him for a long moment. Peace isn't something you find. It's something you build. Slowly. With good systems. Good people. Paolo frowned. "And what if good people get used by bad ones?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Then they build better locks." The kid nodded. "Thought about it. You were one of them, weren't you?" Daniel arched a brow. "One of what?" Paolo shrugged. "Someone who got used." Daniel looked at the whiteboard behind him. Wiped it clean with one swipe. Used maybe. Broken? Never. On the first Sunday of spring, Daniel stood alone in the narrow courtyard behind his Lisbon apartment. A metal fire pit crackled before him, the flames licking the edge of a small envelope. Inside it, Elise's last letter. He'd kept it longer than he wanted to admit. Read it once. Memorized every word. Then folded it again. But now it needed to go. He watched it burn. Slow. Controlled. The fire didn't roar. It whispered, like it understood what was being released. Not hate, not pain, just finality. Ash floated upward, curling into the gray sky. Daniel stood still, the light reflecting in his eyes. Then he whispered, like a prayer or a surrender, "I'm done." He walked back inside. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Only the quiet feeling of weight finally leaving his chest. That night, Daniel opened a blank document on his laptop. Title, Systems of the Broken. He didn't start with revenge, or sabotage, or Elise. He started with silence. The kind of silence that comes after betrayal. The kind that makes a man study patterns. Not because he's paranoid, but because it's the only thing keeping him from drowning. He wrote, "There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who trust until they break, and those who break until they learn to trust." Then he wrote about Helix. Not the mission, the people, the lies, the logic, the choices. He didn't call it a memoir. He called it documentation. Because to Daniel, stories weren't for sympathy. They were blueprints, meant to teach others where the failure lines lived. He wrote for hours, and when he was done, he saved it, then backed it up. Twice. On a Saturday, Daniel returned to the cafe near the harbor, the one he used to visit when he first arrived in Lisbon. He sat at the corner table, quiet, reading. A woman passed by, her coat caught in the wind. She stopped, smiled. "Professor Cole?" Daniel looked up, blinked once. It was the same student, the one who asked too many questions. She wasn't a student anymore. "I thought you left the university," she said. "I did," he replied. "I'm in research now," she said. "But I remembered something you said about peace needing good systems." Daniel smiled, just barely. "Still true." She hesitated. "Can I sit?" He nodded. They sat in silence for a minute. Then she asked, "Do you ever miss it? The mission?" Daniel stared into his coffee. "No," he said. "I miss being someone who didn't need one." They met again. Once. Then twice. No questions. No assumptions. She never asked what he had done. He never offered. There was no spark, no cinematic kiss, no confessions. Just peace. She laughed at his dry sarcasm. He listened to her talk about neural mapping and smiled when she got too excited. It wasn't love. Not yet. Maybe never. But it was honest. And after everything Daniel had lived through, honesty felt like a miracle. One night, she asked, if you could go back, fix one thing, what would it be? He thought about Elise. Marcus. The Helix logs. The 10 years that disappeared in a fire he started himself. And finally he answered, I wouldn't fix anything. I'd just stop breaking myself to repair people who weren't even trying to hold their shape. Daniel stood before the small, reinforced security locker he'd kept buried behind the bookshelf, disguised as part of the frame. Inside were 3 things: a backup drive containing the final Helix logs, Marcus's security badge, and a single USB marked in faded red ink, mirror_P1_final. He stared at them one last time, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. Then, without ceremony, he placed each item in a padded case, sealed it shut, and took a cab down to the Swiss consulate. He handed the case to a courier. Destination, a private depository vault. Unlisted. Untouched. No retrieval, he said. Ever. Ever. The clerk raised an eyebrow. You sure? Daniel nodded. If I ever ask for it back, he said, tell me no. As he walked out into the snow-speckled light, he felt it. Closure. Not from forgetting, but from choosing not to reopen. Daniel received the vault confirmation 3 days later. Secure vault assigned. Access permanently denied per your instruction. He read the message once, then deleted it. There was no reason to keep it. That night, he walked down to the coast, where the waves broke against the rocks like distant memories. He stood there a long time. Didn't speak. Didn't move. Just listened. The ocean didn't care what you'd done. It only ever pulled forward. He turned from the water and didn't look back. The last vault was closed. Inside him, where it mattered. Weeks later, Daniel found himself in a rare moment of temptation. He opened an archived folder labeled base, Omega_CM3, one of the last working feeds he'd left linked to Fort Halbert. The file loaded slowly. A gray corridor flickered onto the screen. Empty. Then, movement. Elise, dressed in a transport jumpsuit. Head low, shoulders drawn in. She walked down the hallway without resistance. No handcuffs. No guards. Just her. And silence. Daniel hovered his cursor over the export button, paused, then selected delete permanently. The screen went black. A symbol of control, not over her, but over himself. Some footage wasn't worth keeping, not even as proof. A month later, Daniel passed by a military monument in Munich's Central Square. Bronze soldiers frozen in perfect defiance. A plaque below read, "For those who fought without glory." He stood there for a moment, let it hit, then moved on, because there would never be a statue for men like him. No medal, no ceremony, no history book chapter, just one clean fact: he existed. He fought. He won. Quietly. Efficiently. Without applause. And sometimes, that was the only justice that mattered. The Lisbon train station hummed beneath golden morning light. Daniel stood near platform 6, no bag, no documents. Just a paperback novel tucked under his arm and a ticket in his jacket. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was choosing. The voice on the loudspeaker called for departure. A high-speed line toward Madrid. No cameras at border stops, no digital tracking. Just a ride. He didn't board. Instead, he sat on the bench, watching strangers walk by, some smiling, some lost in their screens, some carrying their own invisible battles. He liked that. The anonymity of people simply existing. A boy with a plastic soldier clutched in one hand ran past him, laughing. Daniel smiled faintly. He once believed the world was a machine. Predictable. Programmed. But now? Now he saw it differently. Not as a system, but as a rhythm. Something chaotic, broken, alive. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out one final item. A small chip, the last encrypted fragment of mirror_protocol. The origin of everything. He stood, walked to the nearest bin, and dropped it inside. Gone. No shadow. No signature. No proof. He walked out of the station as the train pulled away behind him, its sound long and fading like the memory of the man he used to be. Daniel now lived in a second-floor flat above a print shop near the Alfama district. He didn't work much. Some consulting here and there. Mostly quiet things. But what he did do, every morning, without fail, it was walk the same 2 blocks to the ocean wall, sit on a rusted bench, and watch the ships. Never the same one twice. He liked it that way. One morning, she joined him. The girl from the cafe, now just herself, without questions, without layers. They didn't speak much. Just sat. She handed him a folded page from a philosophy book she'd been annotating. Justice is not a loud reckoning. It's the soft restoration of what you lost in the dark. Daniel read it, folded it once, and put it in his coat. I think I'm going to leave academia, she said. Where to? Doesn't matter, she replied. Just forward. Daniel nodded. I'll walk you to the tram. And they stood, 2 people with no need for unfinished sentences or empty apologies. Just the kind of silence that doesn't isolate. The kind that restores. It rained softly the morning Daniel left the city. No goodbyes. No letter. Just one last stop, a flower stall near the edge of the tram line. He bought a single white camellia. No reason. No name attached. Then walked the narrow back streets until he reached the old garden behind the university. The one no one visited since the wing closed. The soil had grown wild, but the center bench remained. Cracked, worn, but holding. He sat there, placed the flower on the stone. It wasn't for Elise. It wasn't even for Marcus. It was for the man he used to be, the one who made breakfast, wrote defense code, and believed trust was a one-way door. He sat there for an hour. Let the rain touch him. Not as punishment, as permission. A jogger passed by, then a couple, laughing under a too small umbrella. None of them knew him. None of them had to. That, in the end, was the point. He hadn't built his legacy in medals or headlines. He built it in shadows, in silence, in knowing he survived and still had something human left to give. When he stood, the flower stayed behind. The bench creaked. The world moved on. And so did he. Daniel's last entry in his journal was simple. A single page. They didn't destroy me. They just helped me rebuild myself without the pieces I never needed. He closed the book, locked it in a drawer, then walked out onto the balcony, the sun catching the edge of the sky like a match strike. And now, here's the question he would have asked you, if he ever could. If you had everything taken from you, would you chase revenge? Or would you disappear into the peace they never wanted you to find? Think about that. And tell us below, what would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from? Would you burn it all like Daniel, or walk away and never look back? And if this story made you feel something, if it made you think twice about trust, control, and the quiet kind of justice, hit like. Subscribe. Share it with someone who'd understand. Not for the algorithm. For the ones who've been broken and rebuilt. The ghosts that still walk among us, with clean hands and dirty memories. Thank you for walking with Daniel Cross. We'll see you in the shadows.